Have you ever noticed how one small thing, something so ordinary, so easy to overlook, can actually be a warning sign? Maybe your dad, who used to love his morning walk, suddenly says he's too tired. Or your mom skips lunch and just says, "I'm not that hungry today." You brush it off, right? Maybe you think, they're just getting older. That's normal. But what if it's not? What if that tiny moment, that skipped meal, that quiet fatigue, that little breathlessness? What if it's your only chance to catch something serious before it's too late? The truth is, after the age of 68, the body doesn't always shout when something's wrong. It whispers. Softly. Gently. Subtly. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. And then one day, you get the call. Sudden deaths in older adults, yes, the kind that leave us stunned, broken, and full of what-ifs, they often don't happen out of the blue. They happen because we didn't know what to look for. But you're here now. And that means you care, you want to understand. You want to protect your loved ones. Maybe even protect yourself. And that already makes you one step ahead. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 6 hidden but deadly triggers, the real reasons behind 99% of sudden deaths after age 68. The signs most people miss. The ones no one talks about until it's too late. You might already be seeing them, and not even realize it. But you won't just learn what to watch for. You'll learn how to stop it, how to respond with love and wisdom, and how to help the people you care about live not just longer, but with more peace, comfort, and dignity. So, take a breath. This matters. This could change everything. And hey, if you're here because you care about someone, or you're just trying to be more aware of your own health as you age, comment "I'm here" below. Let me know you're watching. Let's build this community together. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to Elder Mature Moments, where we talk about the things no one else wants to say, in a way that truly helps. Let's get into it. Let's start with one of the most silent and most dangerous causes of sudden death after 68, the heart. Now, picture this. Mr. Thompson. He was 72. The kind of man who still mowed his own lawn, took pride in his garden, walked the dog every evening. Always moving. Always active. Until one day, he wasn't. He went for his usual walk, just like every evening. But halfway through, he paused, stumbled a little, and collapsed. Just like that. Gone before help could even arrive. His family was devastated. They kept asking, how? He was fine just yesterday. But what they didn't know, is that for weeks, even months, he had been feeling a little more tired. Slightly dizzy after standing. Sometimes short of breath, even at rest. He never said much. Maybe he didn't want to worry anyone. Maybe he just thought, it's probably just part of getting older. But it wasn't. It was his heart. More specifically, his heart's rhythm. You see, after 68, the heart doesn't always beat like it used to. Its electrical system can start to misfire. Sometimes it skips beats. Sometimes it races. Sometimes it slows down for no clear reason. That's called arrhythmia, and one of the most common types in older adults is atrial fibrillation, or AFib. It sounds technical, I know. But the reality is simple: when your heart beats irregularly, blood doesn't flow the way it should. That increases the risk of strokes, blood clots, and sudden cardiac arrest, without warning. And the tricky part? The early signs don't scream. They whisper. Mild fatigue. A flutter in the chest. Lightheadedness when standing up too fast. A little shortness of breath climbing the stairs. These signs are easy to brush off. I'm just tired today. Maybe I didn't sleep well. It's probably my age. But these aren't just age talking. They can be your heart begging you to pay attention. One of the biggest misconceptions people have is thinking symptoms like these are just from being out of shape or simply aging. But aging gracefully doesn't mean ignoring discomfort. It means being tuned in, especially when the symptoms are subtle. So, what can you do? Start simple. Encourage your loved ones, or yourself, to get regular heart checkups. Even if you feel fine. And today, we're lucky. You don't have to wait for a doctor's appointment to catch early warning signs. There are affordable home devices, like pulse monitors, or even smartwatches, that can check your heart rate and rhythm. If it feels off, don't guess. Don't wait. Talk to a doctor. The truth is, the earlier you catch an irregular heartbeat, the easier it is to manage. There are medications, lifestyle changes, and in some cases, simple procedures that can dramatically reduce the risk of something worse happening down the road. Because sudden death doesn't always come without warning. Sometimes, it comes with tiny clues that we're just not trained to see. But now you are. And the heart? It's not the only part of the body that can betray us quietly. There's another threat, just as silent, and it's hiding deep within the bloodstream. Let's talk about it next. Now let's shift from the heart, to something even more invisible. Blood. You don't see it. You don't feel it moving. But inside your body, it's always working, carrying oxygen, nutrients, keeping you alive without asking for thanks. But as we get older, that quiet system can start to turn on us, and when it does, the results can be devastating. Let me tell you about Clara. She was 74. Kind-hearted, lively, loved her garden, and always made the best sweet potato pie in the neighborhood. One weekend, she took a road trip to visit her niece, for hours sitting in the car, legs hardly moving. When she got there, she noticed her left calf was a little swollen. Warm to the touch. It felt tight and sore, like she might have pulled a muscle. She mentioned it briefly, laughed it off, put her feet up, and said, "Just old legs acting up." But a week later, she collapsed. Rushed to the ER, barely breathing. Doctors said it was a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot had formed in her leg, traveled to her lungs, and blocked blood flow. It's something called deep vein thrombosis, or DVT. And it's more common than most people think, especially after 68. You see, as we age, our blood tends to clot more easily. Our circulation slows down. Muscles don't squeeze the veins as efficiently, especially if we sit too long or don't move as much as we used to. The risk climbs even higher if we've had surgery, take certain medications, or live with conditions like diabetes or heart disease. And here's what makes it so dangerous: DVT doesn't usually come with dramatic symptoms. It's often just one leg, slightly swollen. A little sore. Maybe warmer than the other. Some people even think it's arthritis or a pulled muscle. So they rest. They stay off the leg. They wait for it to get better. But that's the exact opposite of what the body needs in that moment. That clot can grow. It can break loose. And when it does, it can travel straight to the lungs and cut off oxygen within seconds. And just like that, someone we love is gone. The tragic part? This is often preventable. So what can you do? First, watch for the signs: one leg more swollen than the other. Tenderness or pain when pressing on the calf. A feeling of heaviness, tightness, or heat in the leg. A deep ache that gets worse when standing or walking. Second, encourage movement. Even just stretching the legs every hour during long car rides or sitting spells can help. Simple ankle circles, toe taps, or short walks around the house make a difference. If someone's in bed recovering from surgery or illness, help them move their legs, gently and often. Hydration also plays a big role. The thicker the blood, the easier it clots. Many older adults don't drink enough water, especially when they're not feeling well. Remind them. Offer water often, even if they say they're not thirsty. And in higher-risk situations, like recent surgeries, long travel, or known circulation issues, compression socks can support blood flow. In some cases, doctors might recommend a blood thinner to prevent clots. But here's the key: you can't see a clot forming. You can't feel your blood getting thicker. So you have to stay alert to the small signs, the quiet warnings, and take them seriously. Because that moment of hesitation could be the moment everything changes. Still, as dangerous as blood clots can be, there's another threat, one that's even harder to catch. Not in the legs. Not in the lungs. But in the mind. And when it shows up, it often looks like confusion, forgetfulness, or even a personality shift. But it's not what you think. Let's talk about it next. Now this next one, it catches families off guard like no other. Imagine this. You're sitting with your dad. He looks you straight in the face, and forgets your name. Or maybe your mom, who's always been sharp as a tack, suddenly she's mixing up words, getting agitated, saying things that don't make sense. She's confused. Lost in her own living room. You think, is this dementia? Alzheimer's? Did it really happen overnight? That's exactly what happened to John. He was 79. A retired school principal. Always remembered everyone's birthday, every anniversary, every little story you told him. His memory was something people admired. Then one morning, he started calling his daughter by his sister's name. By lunchtime, he couldn't find the bathroom in his own house. By evening, he was agitated, accusing his family of hiding things. His daughter was heartbroken. She assumed the worst. Early dementia. Maybe even the beginning of the end. But when they took him to the doctor, the truth was far more surprising, and much more hopeful. It was a urinary tract infection. Something so common, something so simple, yet it had flipped his entire world upside down. See, in older adults, infections don't always show up the way we expect. There's no fever. No burning sensation. No obvious pain. Instead, the mind starts to slip. This is called delirium, a sudden and severe change in mental state. And it's far more common than people think. It's not just infections, either. Sometimes it's a new medication. A simple change in dosage. A new sleeping pill. A pain reliever. Even an over-the-counter antihistamine can trigger confusion. The brain in older age becomes more sensitive. What used to be a harmless pill at 40 can cause chaos at 75. And here's where it gets dangerous. Most families, understandably, assume these symptoms are the start of permanent cognitive decline. They say things like, "We knew it was coming," or "It's just part of aging." But that delay in seeking help, that assumption, can cost valuable time. Because delirium, unlike dementia, is often reversible. If you catch it early, if you treat the underlying cause, be it an infection, medication, dehydration, or low oxygen, your loved one can bounce back almost entirely. So here's what you need to watch for: sudden confusion or disorientation. Personality changes that appear overnight. Difficulty focusing or switching between topics. Hallucinations, restlessness, or aggression. Trouble sleeping or reversed sleep-wake cycles. If your loved one starts acting differently, especially if it happens quickly, don't wait. Don't try to explain it away. Get them checked. Urinalysis, blood work, medication review, these small steps can uncover the real issue. And don't be afraid to speak up to healthcare providers. Say, "This isn't like them. Something's off." You know your loved one better than anyone. Because in many cases, this confusion isn't the beginning of the end. It's a medical flare, a red flag waving in silence. And if you catch it, you can bring them back. Now, as frightening as a confused mind can be, There's another warning sign that's just as quiet, but it shows up in the very thing we take for granted every single day. Breathing. Let's talk about that next. Breathing. We don't think about it much, do we? It just happens. Quietly. In the background. Until one day, it doesn't. This next story is one that breaks my heart, because it's all too common, and far too easy to miss. Margaret was 76. She lived with her son and his family. Always kept busy. She helped in the kitchen, folded laundry, loved reading bedtime stories to her grandkids. One night, her son noticed she was breathing a bit heavier than usual as she slept. Nothing loud or dramatic, just a little strained. A faint wheeze. He thought, it's probably just snoring. Maybe she's catching a cold. But Margaret didn't complain. She was the type who didn't want to be a burden. Over the next few weeks, she started feeling more tired during the day. She dozed off during conversations. She stopped reading to the kids at night. Her appetite dropped. Her spark dimmed. Then one afternoon, she collapsed. By the time they reached the hospital, her oxygen levels were dangerously low. It was respiratory failure. Here's what most people don't realize: as we get older, our lungs don't work the same way. The muscles that support breathing get weaker. The chest wall becomes stiffer. Conditions like COPD, congestive heart failure, or even silent pneumonia, yes, pneumonia without the usual cough or fever, can creep in slowly. Oxygen levels start to dip, little by little. But instead of gasping for air, older adults often show subtle signs: a little confusion, more daytime fatigue, restlessness at night, a vague sense of being off. It's easy to chalk it up to poor sleep, or age, or stress. But it might actually be hypoxia, low oxygen in the blood. And if left untreated, it can lead to heart strain, organ failure, and yes, sudden collapse. So how can you tell? Start with observation. Watch how they breathe when they're resting. Is the breathing shallow? Are the shoulders rising with each breath? Do they seem more tired than usual after minimal effort? Check the color of their lips or fingertips. Are they slightly bluish? That's a sign oxygen isn't reaching the extremities. Notice if they seem forgetful at night, or if their sleep is more restless than usual. Oxygen levels often drop during sleep, especially with underlying lung issues. But here's one of the most powerful tools you can use: a pulse oximeter. It's a small, clip-on device you can buy for a few dollars at the pharmacy or online. It checks oxygen saturation and pulse rate within seconds. If you see oxygen levels consistently below 92%, especially with symptoms, that's a red flag. Don't wait. Get medical attention. Doctors can run further tests, chest X-rays, blood gases, or prescribe oxygen support if needed. Sometimes, it's a matter of adjusting medications. Other times, it means catching an infection before it spreads. And just like that, you might not only improve someone's energy and comfort. You might save their life. Because breath is life. And when it changes, even just a little, it's worth paying attention. But breathing isn't the only function that quietly tips out of balance as we age. There's something else, something even more common, yet far more invisible. And it all starts with a simple glass of water. Now, let's talk about something that seems so simple, so basic, that we often don't realize just how dangerous it can become. Water. It sounds almost too ordinary to be a threat, right? But for older adults, dehydration, and the electrolyte imbalances that follow, can quietly become one of the most serious health risks of all. Let me tell you about Walter. He was 81. The quiet type. Always had a glass of water nearby. Always said he was drinking enough. But then came a stretch of hot days in early summer. Nothing extreme. just warm enough to break a little sweat while gardening. Walter still went about his daily routine, watering the plants, taking short walks, reading in his sunroom. After 3 days, his daughter found him staring blankly at the wall. He couldn't recall the day of the week. He seemed dizzy, disoriented, not himself. They took him to the hospital. And the labs? They showed dangerously low sodium levels. He was dehydrated, despite having that water glass nearby all along. Here's what we often forget: as we age, our thirst response gets weaker. The body doesn't send the same "I need water" signals it used to. So even if someone says, "I'm not thirsty," it doesn't mean they're actually hydrated. To make matters more complex, many older adults take medications like diuretics, also known as water pills, to manage blood pressure or heart conditions. These medications flush excess fluid out of the body. But they also flush out electrolytes, essential minerals like sodium, potassium, and magnesium that help the heart beat properly, the muscles contract, and the brain think clearly. When those levels drop too low, the effects can be sudden and severe. Confusion, muscle weakness, irregular heartbeats, fatigue that feels like you're walking through mud, even seizures or fainting in extreme cases. The saddest part? Most people don't know it's happening until it's already serious. Because dehydration in older adults rarely looks like thirst. It looks like brain fog. It looks like a bad mood. It looks like, "I just don't feel right today." So what can we do? Start with a simple habit: offer fluids regularly, even when they say they're not thirsty. Don't wait for the cue. Be proactive. Water is great, but you can also mix it up: herbal teas, diluted fruit juice, broth-based soups, hydrating fruits like watermelon, oranges, and cucumbers. You don't need to push huge glasses all day long. Small, consistent sips add up. And if they've been outdoors, sweating, or on certain medications, electrolyte drinks, the low-sugar kind, can help restore balance. Think of options that have sodium, potassium, and magnesium, but avoid ones loaded with artificial sweeteners or high sugar. And here's a little tip: watch for signs of dehydration like dry mouth, dark urine, confusion, dizziness when standing, or even sudden cramping. Sometimes, just catching these little things can prevent a full-blown health crisis. Because it's not just about staying hydrated, it's about keeping the entire system in balance. The brain, the heart, the muscles, they all rely on those invisible minerals flowing through every cell. And when those go off, the whole body feels it. Now, we've covered the heart, the blood, the brain, the lungs, and now the very cells themselves. But there's one more sign we need to talk about. It's the most overlooked, the most misunderstood, and for many families, the most emotionally difficult to accept. It doesn't show up in a lab test. It's not something you measure with a monitor. It shows up in behavior, in spirit, in energy. Let's talk about it next. And please, listen closely. Sometimes, the body doesn't send out alarms. It doesn't scream. It's simply, "Let's go." This last sign is the quietest of them all. It's not marked by pain or coughing or sudden confusion. It shows up in the silence. In the cancelled plans. In the long pauses at the dinner table. In the absence of what once brought joy. Helen was 83. She was vibrant. Warm. Always dressed in bright colors, always had a kind word. Church on Sundays. Book club on Wednesdays. She loved cooking Sunday dinners for her family, always had something bubbling on the stove. But slowly, almost unnoticeably, she started to let go of those little routines. First, she missed church once. Then twice. She told her daughter the book club felt like too much lately. Soon, she stopped cooking altogether. Then it was the meals. She'd pick at her food. Skip breakfast. Say, "I'm just not hungry today." Her family thought maybe she was feeling a little down. Maybe the weather. Maybe boredom. They figured she needed a change of scenery. But within a few weeks, Helen was spending most of her day in bed. Not because she wanted to, but because her body didn't have the energy to do anything else. When they finally brought her to the doctor, the truth came out. This wasn't just sadness. This wasn't boredom or loneliness. This was the beginning of systemic decline. Her organs, slowly, quietly, were starting to shut down. You see, in the final stretch of life, the body begins to conserve energy. The brain tells the body, slow down. Save what's left. And often, that starts with withdrawal from life. Loss of appetite. Lack of interest in conversation. Choosing rest over routines. Not because they're lazy. Not because they're sad. Because something inside is shifting. The body knows, before we do. But here's the complicated part, sometimes it is depression. Sometimes it is grief, or emotional exhaustion, or lack of stimulation. And sometimes, it's something physical that can be treated. That's why this sign is so tricky, and so delicate. Families often assume it's just age or just loneliness. But the truth could be deeper. So what do? You don't rush in with guilt or pressure. You lean in with love. Ask questions, gently. Not, "Why aren't you doing anything?" but, "How are you feeling today?" Not, "You have to eat," but, "Can I bring you something light you enjoy?" Encourage small routines, without overwhelming. A walk to the porch. A short phone call with a friend. Music in the background. Warm lighting. Familiar scents. Anything that brings a little spark back into their world. And most importantly, rule out physical causes first. Talk to the doctor. Ask for blood work. Check medications. Sometimes, withdrawal is linked to untreated pain, infections, low oxygen, or medication side effects. But if all else has been ruled out, if it really is the body preparing for transition, then what your loved one needs most in that moment is your presence. Your patience. Your understanding. And your willingness to meet them where they are, not where you wish they'd be. Because sometimes, the best care isn't fixing what's broken. It's simply being there, holding their hand through it all. And yes, this can be devastating to witness. Seeing someone you love slip away slowly is one of the hardest things a human heart can endure. But there is strength in awareness. And there is power in love that shows up, even when the person you love begins to fade. You've now learned 6 of the most overlooked but deadly triggers of sudden death in older adults. And with that knowledge, you have the chance to step in. To notice. To act. To help someone live just a little longer. Or better. Or more peacefully. You're not helpless. You're not too late. Let's talk about what all this means, emotionally, personally, and practically, right now. Watching someone you love begin to slip. It's like trying to hold onto sunlight with your bare hands. No matter how tightly you grip, it feels like it's drifting through your fingers. And it's not always sudden, is it? Sometimes, it's slow. Piece by piece. A forgotten name. A missed appointment. A quiet dinner instead of laughter around the table. You start to see the person you love change. And your heart breaks quietly, over and over again. Because they're still here, but not quite the same. That pain, it's real. It's deep. It's the kind of ache that sits in your chest while you fold their laundry, or look at an old photo, or listen to their favorite song. And sometimes, it makes you feel helpless. Like you're watching something happen that you can't stop. But here's something I want you to hold on to. What if these signs weren't just warnings? What if they were invitations? Invitations to lean in closer. To notice. To ask the questions you've been too afraid to ask. To say the things you've been meaning to say. Because knowledge, awareness, it gives you back a kind of power. Not the power to stop time, but the power to change the quality of the time that remains. Every skipped meal, every moment of confusion, every heavy breath, it's a nudge. A whisper that says, now is the moment to act. Not out of panic. Not out of fear. But out of love. Gentle, patient, steady love. So if even one of these 6 signs felt familiar to you, don't wait. Make the call. Send the message. Sit down beside them and ask how they're really feeling. Even if it's uncomfortable. Even if it's hard. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person, one moment of attention, to turn things around. To get a checkup. To adjust a medication. To catch a warning before it becomes a crisis. And even if the outcome can't be changed. Even if the decline continues. You will know that you didn't turn away. You didn't miss the signs. You showed up. And that is the greatest act of love we can offer. Because aging isn't just about decline. It's about dignity. It's about presence. It's about creating an ending that is just as full of meaning as the life that came before it. There is hope. There's always hope. Hope in the form of awareness. Hope in the form of small, consistent care. Hope in the way we look at aging, not as something to fear, but as something sacred. So breathe. You're not alone in this. And it's never too late to make a difference. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've just uncovered. We talked about 6 of the most common and most silent causes of sudden death in people over 68, triggers that too often go unnoticed, until it's too late. To recap, 1. Heart irregularities. Not just tiredness or age, it could be your heart's rhythm misfiring. 2. Blood clots. 1 swollen leg. A little tenderness. That's all it takes to start a dangerous chain reaction. 3. Sudden confusion. Not always dementia. It could be an infection, or a reaction to medication, disguising itself as forgetfulness. 4. Shallow or labored breathing. Not just snoring or poor sleep. It might be a signal that oxygen isn't reaching where it needs to go. 5. Dehydration and electrolyte imbalances. They might say they're not thirsty, but that doesn't mean they're hydrated. 6. Withdrawing from life. Not just sadness. Sometimes, the body is starting to slow down, and it needs you to notice. Each of these signs is subtle. Quiet. Easy to overlook. But you know better now. You've taken the time to listen, to learn, to lean in. That already makes you part of the solution. You're not just watching a video, you're becoming someone who can make a difference when it matters most. So let's open the conversation. Have you seen any of these signs in someone you care about? Maybe a parent, a grandparent, or even in your own body. Drop a comment below, share your experience, your concern, or even just a moment that made you pause. Sometimes, one story can help another family take action too. And if this video helped you understand something a little more clearly, if it gave you peace of mind, or the words you needed to ask the hard questions, I invite you to subscribe to Elder Mature Moments. This is more than a channel. It's a community. A safe space where aging isn't feared, but honored. Where we learn, together. Where we speak about the things that matter most, even when they're difficult. So hit that subscribe button, if you haven't already. And join us on this journey. Because there's so much more we'll explore, about health, caregiving, love, loss, and everything in between. But for now, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring enough to seek the signs, and for choosing to face this with wisdom, strength, and heart. Stay strong. Stay aware. And as always, Take care of yourself, and those you love. I'll see you in the next video.